face of the manager, who was supposed to have been moved to headquarters, appeared in front of me and suddenly began to yell at me in my face.
You're unpatrobach. You're fired, you hear me? Fished. I'll be tight when she's wedding request. Got it. Where's my...
What are you talking about? Mr. Jacobson?
But we don't need any adulterers in this store. Setting a bad example of what it is to be a respectable human being.
I was so angry with this unfair outburst of rage and insults that I tried to talk back, but when I asked him why, I was told a terrible truth. This is the story of how my husband had been doing the unthinkable for nearly 3 whole years, and how it came to a satisfying end, at least to me. My name is Kyra and I'm 32 years old. I used to live with my husband Mason and our daughter Ada. I first met my husband at the supermarket, where I was working part-time once upon a time. I now work at the same supermarket, but now as a full-time employee. My husband was a regular customer there, and one fateful day, he helped me. I was involved with a troublesome customer that was conjuring up a bit of a commotion in the building. Thereafter, we started greeting each other every time he came to the store, and the small talk eventually led Mason asking me for my contact information. I gave him his number, and we started going out to meals together. There, my husband and I hit it off, and we officially started dating. Right around that time, a new manager was transferred to the branch where I work. His name is Mr. Jacobson, and although he was a very cheerful man, he was very good at his job and a very reliable manager at the store. Rumor had it that he had worked as a manager at various stores in order to make the most experience of his work and move up the ladder towards headquarters. But really, Mr. Jacobson was just so good at his job that he should have been working at headquarters right around then already. Mason had talked to Mr. Jacobson in person a few times, and he liked him a lot. He's a very great guy, isn't he? That Mr. Jacobson? A really charming guy, indeed. If I were to marry you as him, I'd love to ask him to do us the honor of giving the wedding speech. That's a great idea. I hope it happens, honestly. He didn't know how right he was. Perhaps 8 months after that conversation, Mason proposed marriage to me. Of course. I said yes. I immediately reported it to Mr. Jacobson and told him I wanted to ask him to give this speech at the wedding. He was very pleased with my news, and he was overjoyed to hear me ask him to do the honors. And on the big day, thanks, I told him I wanted to ask him to give the speech at the wedding. He was very pleased with my news, and he was overjoyed to hear me ask him to do the honors. And on the big day, thanks to his amazing speech, I'm happy to report that the event turned out to be a wedding more wonderful than I'd ever imagined was possible. Even now, I'm still in awe at how majestic the wedding was. The week after the wedding, I was called forth by Mr. Jacobson.
Miss Kyra, I know you got married, so I have something very important to ask you.
He was evidently trying to tell me something that was difficult to say. I was afraid I had done something wrong in my work. Was I too slow as a cashier? Did I put the spices in their places crooked? Did a customer file a complaint against me? Right as I was about to turn paranoid, Mr. Jacobson suddenly displayed that gorgeous smile of his and said brightly, "I'd like to ask a favor of you because I trust that you can do this job very well. I'd like you to help me make this store a success. I want you to be my assistant manager."
Big damn! It actually sounds like I'm the one proposing to you, even after you got married. But yes, I'll gladly accept it. To that, Bray smart.
Hey, if you could ignore that part about looking as though I was proposing, it'll literally look like I'm proposing to you. That's gonna put my job in jeopardy. Maybe that's what I'm going for. We laughed as we acted silly to each other in this manner. I was happy. I was happy that I got a promotion. I was happy that Mr. Jacobson trusted me. And I was happy that I could make more of a difference in the family budget now that I'll be making more every month. When I told Mason that I had become assistant manager of the store, he was also very happy. From then on, I worked very hard at my job. Mason told me that he wanted to have a baby. But since it was right after I was appointed assistant manager, I asked him to wait a little while until he got accustomed to the work. A year and a half later, we were finally blessed with a child. I had been consulting Mr. Jacobson about the timing, and I think we were conceived at exactly the right time. I was certain Mason would be happy. It was his dream to have a child, after all. That's what I genuinely thought. However, my husband's reaction was different from what I expected. "Hey Mason, I have some amazing news. We are finally able to have a baby. Now we're gonna be a mom and dad.
Oh, really? Dear first person. Well, congratulations.
Wait, are you not happy?
Oh, no, honey. And Shakti. I'm so happy. Yeah, that was still a very mediocre reaction. I knew why he was reacting this way. He was lying about the fact he didn't know I was pregnant.
He'd always had a habit of lying to me when I say things that don't sit well with him. For example, I remember one meaningless incident where he ate a cup of ice cream that I had bought for myself and was looking forward to without my permission. And when I asked him about it, he said,
Thanks, Nye. Wasn't it made?
When I questioned him about it, he went on to say, who else would have eaten it but you? If you think there are more than 2 people living in this house, then you've officially gone insane.
Me, it was your parents. Alright, Bri. Aubrey.
Oh yeah, sure. They really would just show up here without notifying me, only to raid my fridge and devoid it of delicious ice cream. Why would you lie about something that's so obvious?
I can just buy you the ice cream again. Buskers by Gim. This how made you get that upset?
I'm upset because I hate lying more than getting my ice cream eaten up.
There's this mushbed out there. I guess that's a good point. I'm sorry, honey. It just looked so good and I couldn't resist myself.
He only confessed when the situation was completely hopeless for him. Just wait and see professionals. Another example, my phone had locked by itself. My phone was the kind of phone where if you get the passcode wrong 3 times, you couldn't use your phone for a minute. I noticed my phone was in that state one day, and when I asked my husband if he had touched my phone, his answer was,
I didn't touch it, no. Wow.
Then why is it locked like this?
Oh, maybe it had an button that did the password without me about it.
It doesn't respond over close, dumbass. Did you have something to do with my phone, or what?
I told you it wasn't mine. I told you it wasn't me.
Listen, do you really think I'm going to buy that lie? That question, along with some more interrogation, made the situation hopeless for him, and he apologized and told me the truth. Whenever he got to a point where he just couldn't get away with any excuses any longer, he would finally come clean. And what kind of lie was he telling this time about not being too enthusiastic about being pregnant? He happened to have a picture on his phone with a pregnancy test that showed the results were positive. And how did I discover this photo without him knowing about? Well, I may or may not have just happened to be cleaning up right behind him as he was sorting through his photos on his phone. Perhaps he was so happy to see the pregnancy test I had left on the table the day before, and he sent it to his parents. And he reacted that way to hide the fact that he knew I was pregnant. He must have thought that if he told me he knew I was pregnant, I would say something along the lines of, well, if you knew, why didn't you say anything? I settled with the thought that he had to react a bit coldly if he didn't want me to feel hurt when I told him the news. The actual reality was me a bit sad and disappointed about how ingenuine his reaction was. Why didn't he just be happy for me? For us, anyway. I got pregnant without any trouble at all, and thanks to Mr. Jacobson's very flexible attitude. I was able to do my work without any of the usual physical labor and instead worked a desk job for the store. Thanks to the manager, my last month of pregnancy went by without anything amiss happening, and I soon went on maternity leave. I eventually gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and I thought things would go back to normal. But for some reason, Mason was still pretty distracted even after the birth of our daughter, and his strange behavior never seemed to waver. But I was more concerned about my newborn daughter, and for a while I was so desperate to protect this precious life that I had nurtured that everything Mason ever did just didn't matter whatsoever. And it wasn't like he refused to help me raise our daughter. He's on the contrary, he was a very good father to Ada, so I didn't have any complaints. When Ada turned 2 months old, Mr. Jacobson stopped by my house with a gift. But unfortunately, the gift was the whole good thing he brought with him that day, for he revealed some bad news.
I'm moving to headquarters next month. I feel so bad about the fact that I won't be able to work with you anymore. This Kairos is shelved mortars per SP. I didn't think it would be right to just leave without saying anything, so I came to say hello. And of course, I want to see your cute little baby's face.
I was so shocked. I loved Mr. Jacobson as my boss, and I trusted him with all my heart and soul, so I knew I would miss him. When I told you he'd brought some bad news, it was only bad news for me. For Mr. Jacobson, this was the best thing that could have happened. His dream was finally coming true, and I couldn't be happier for him. But the sadness and loneliness. I wanted to give him a good send-off, so I invited him inside for a few hours, baked him my famous muffins to take home with him, congratulated him for his accomplishments, talked a little, played with Ada, and said goodbye. A few years passed. My daughter was now 2 years old. I put her in daycare as an underage child, and I went back to work at the supermarket. I had been working full-time, but now they changed my work schedule to part-time for the time being. I had to pet my daughter, so part-time work was the best I could do. Luckily, Mason had just recently been promoted, so he was making more, and our life didn't seem to change at all. Really, the supermarket had accepted me back after my maternity leave, and I'm very grateful. Mr. Jacobson was replaced with a younger, more serious man whose name was Mr. Navarro, although he appeared to be some kind of geek. Mr. Navarro was a very easy man to talk to, and he was very easy to work with. I was worried about the working environment changing because of Mr. Jacobson's transfer, but I was pleased to discover it was the same after a couple of weeks. One day, away after Mr. Navarro started working there, Mason started acting strange. He suddenly started fidgeting more often, and it looked as though he had acquired sudden onset Tourette syndrome.
Hey, you remember that old manager of the supermarket? Us the one who gave a speech at our wedding. Get him! That's his name! Are you still keeping in touch with him? With?
Mason suddenly started asking me all these suspicious questions about Mr. Jacobson. I answered all his questions honestly. We haven't kept in touch ever since he was promoted into headquarters, honey. I didn't even have his contact information anymore. When I told him that, he said, "Well, that's good. I'm glad." I wondered why my husband was so relieved. It was very unlike the Mason I initially fell in love with. The questions about my old boss were pretty detailed, and all of them were completely out of the blue. I was curious, of course, but I didn't ask him any questions myself because I didn't think it was important, and the conversation ended when he was satisfied. Recently, Mason had been working even harder, and he was not coming home as often as he used to. And since our daughter is still pretty young, whenever he came home late at night after work, long after Ada's bedtime, the sound of him opening and closing the front door, or the noise of him doing some things, sometimes waked her up. She sometimes took a while to get back to sleep. I grew worried that it wasn't good for her health, so I made a suggestion to Mason. I was wondering about something. Listen, I don't know if you would be willing to do this for me, because I know it must be exhausting for you to come home from work and have to live with all the distractions. If you have to work late, you can always stay at a hotel. It's quieter and more peaceful for you, and Ada won't have to be woken up from the sounds that you make downstairs when you make dinner, or take a shower, or anything like that.
I think so what I was thinking. That's true. From now on, I stay at the hotel, but only when I'm running late.
He agreed to the idea, and so my husband didn't come home at all for days on end sometimes. But that doesn't mean our relationship deteriorated over time. Heck, on the contrary, it was still very good. We sometimes went out as a family on holidays, and my daughter missed him when he was away from home. I think the reason she missed him so much, even though she didn't see him as often as she would have liked, was because they were simply father and daughter. That's why I didn't feel particularly anxious about Mason's absence. I knew he was doing what he could for us. I loved him dearly, and his daughter adored him too. Even though we were apart, I trusted Mason with all my heart. The next day, while I was working at the supermarket, I heard from a part-timer that someone from headquarters was going to inspect the store that very morning. I was taking out the goods, hoping that Mr. Jacobson was assigned to the job when... Let me through, damn it! A woman is fired. Fired, you hear me? I suddenly heard a voice shouting from somewhere in the store. I went to where the voice seemed to be coming from, and saw Mr. Jacobson, standing near the entrance with an angry look on his face, pointing directly at me. Oh my goodness, is that you, Mr. Jacobson? It's been so long. I'm back after maternity leave, and I ran up to him with a smile on my face.
How dare you get in my face? You really did me dirty with that innocent little charade you've been playing. But you're fired. Get your lying ass home this instant, and don't touching any of our products again.
Mr. Jacobson, is something the matter?
I'll be far ashamed about the fact that I gave a wedding speech to a cheating adulteress. You'll ruin the store's reputation if you keep working here.
Mr. Jacobson was very angry. Despite my being completely clueless about what he was talking about, I didn't understand a single thing that he was talking about. What was he on about, that I was a cheating adulteress?
Doesn't you freaking hear me? You were. Get the hell out of this store.
Sir, what do you think you're doing? I was so angry at being denied myself that I took a defiant attitude toward Mr. Jacobson. I don't know what exactly you're tripping over, Mr. Jacobson, but I swear in my life, I'm not having an affair.
Don't you dare lie to me. I just happened to run into your husband yesterday, and he was walking with his new wife. What's more, they had brought their child with them. He told me you guys divorced because you were unfaithful to him and ran off with another man. I can't believe such a dishonest bitch is working in a supermarket where so many families come.
What are you talking about? Jacobsies, we're not. I repeat, not divorced.
I trusted you, but I'm disappointed. I'm shocked that you even had the audacity to lie to me.
I went back to the break room to talk to the manager, who didn't seem to want to comprehend the truth that I was telling him. I didn't think I could get anywhere talking to him right then and there, so I grabbed his sleeve and dragged him to the back of the store. I then called my in-laws and put the call on speaker so Mr. Jacobson could then confirm I was still married to their son. As Mrs. McLeod, my darling mother-in-law, confusedly explained that I was indeed still married to Mason, and that they were helping take care of my daughter by letting her play with their dog. Cotton. As time wore on, Mr. Jacobson's face got paler and paler. I mean, obviously, he would. He kept casting aspersions at me, all of which couldn't be justified. I'd never done anything of the sort he thought I did, without ever showing any willingness to listen to what I had to say.
I'm like to express me as study. I trusted you. As Brickish It's Miss Kyra, and that's why I was so shocked when I heard your husband tell me that you had an affair and divorced him. That's why I was so angry when I saw you.
Well, I was definitely glad I was able to clear up the misunderstanding, but the bigger issue is that my husband is having a legitimate affair. And he even had a kid that was apparently born by this other woman. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I knew that however I tried, I could never understand why Mason had done this. I thought we were a family. I thought we were a very happy family, and that's why I couldn't accept the reality. But then I remembered one thing, one important detail that changed everything. Remember that photograph of a pregnancy test on my husband's phone that I mentioned? I asked Mr. Jacobson how old the child was when he met my husband the other day, and he said it was a boy about 2 years old. In other words, the boy was about the same age as our daughter. I then became convinced that the pregnancy test on my husband's phone wasn't mine at all, but instead belonged to the woman whom he was cheating on me with. So that's why his reaction to my pregnancy was so cold. I couldn't stop myself from getting frustrated at the thought of it. Mr. Jacobson must have sensed my frustration because he spoke.
I'm really sorry about the hurt I caused you. It's Kira, risk questions. Allow me. I can help you catch your husband red-handed in the affair there, and if you want to get a divorce. I can get you that too.
Ew. A divorce. I didn't even know there was a way to do that, sir. Then Mr. Jacobson told me his strategy. Mr. Jacobson's family owned a nice dining restaurant, and they had prepared 2 tickets for a free meal for the day. He told me to give one to my husband, and I would then tell him when the day of the reservation approached that I couldn't go with him because I was suddenly assigned to an evening shift that night, and that he should go with someone from his company. That would give him the perfect opportunity to go with his girlfriend, and then we would barge in at the right moment and apprehend them in 4K. He told me that he would give me the entire restaurant for the night, and I could go wild as much as I wanted. I was very grateful to Mr. Jacobson for being so considerate, just as Mr. Jacobson instructed. I gave my husband the tickets, and a few days later, I told him I couldn't go and told him he should go with someone from his company as I handed him the other ticket. He was alright with the sudden change in plans and said he would go with someone from his company. On the day everything was to transpire, I was at the restaurant waiting for him to arrive, but I wasn't waiting for him alone. I was with someone special. And no, it wasn't Mr. Jacobson. Mason and his lover showed up. They both seemed surprised to see no one else in the restaurant, but the woman turned to Mason and said, "Did you book the whole restaurant for me? Today is our 3-year anniversary, isn't it?"
Yuppie! She'd also, on the right about 50 sprint, right? And I managed to reserve the entire restaurant for you. Heidi does next. For me, says.
My husband lies like he breathes. I was stunned. After that, they were enjoying their meal. Then Mr. Jacobson, dressed as their waiter for the evening, asked if they would like to have a commemorative photo. She accepted happily for a picture, because it seemed to be their 3rd anniversary. Mr. Jacobson took a few snapshots, looked at the camera, smiled, and said, "These are excellent photos." The perfect photographic evidence for their affair. I'm Skyra McLeod. That was his signal. I strode into the dining room with my parents-in-law and halted in front of my husband and the woman whom he was cheating on me with. Yes, my dear Watson, the answer to the question. Who is the special people I brought to witness the scene of the crime? Was Mr. and Mrs. McLeod, my parents-in-law, Mason's parents. Mason's face instantly went bloodless and he looked dangerously pale. Eating dinner with your lover sure is nice, isn't it? Mr. McLeod?
What? But how? I get here. Are you here? My mom, Dad, our son. What's going here?
What? These are your parents? And nice to meet you.
It's not nice to meet you, you bitch. Don't fricking need to exchange greetings here. I have no interest in having anything to do with you. My mother-in-law yelled at the woman called Heidi, and she was shell-shocked. I didn't care. I just wanted to hear the truth from my husband's mouth, and what bold things my husband went on to say. This is Heidi, a junior employee for my job. Do you really think that lie is going to get through? Your lies are always unreasonably risky. Listen, tell me the truth for once.
And my husband gave up and started talking. Or he started to explore. Apparently, the kid's after Hurley. And I was in the wrong for calling him a liar when he said she was his junior at work. A reminder to know. That part was true, it seemed. And he was having an affair with her. One that lasted 3 whole years. He got her pregnant at the same time as he did me, so it seems he was happy for both of us. One shrine. I didn't realize it because I never happened to get a copy of the family register. And he told me another truth. Us when we'd agreed on the idea that he would stay at a hotel when he worked late. He was in fact spending time with me.
I spent time at Heidi's home. So in a nutshell, he was living a double family life. I felt absolutely devastated. I was ashamed I ever considered him a man at all, let alone my own husband. I want a divorce.
It's fine, I say. Sure, let's get a divorce, and no way, Crivier, if as contact treat expressly.
This bastard's going to pay double the alimony compared to conventional standards. This bastard and this dastardly woman, his partner in this heinous crime.
They'll also pay double the child support. So you super you study out the actual replaced-her.
Give me a goddamn minute. You think I have that kind of money? Even if I do divorce Kyra, Cyrus, I'll have a new family with Heidi here.
What the hell are you talking about? You're going to live and work at my sister's BB starting today, and we're going to make sure you never see this bitch again.
When my mother-in-law said this, my husband resisted fiercely. But the mental pressure from his parents, as well as the physical pressure from his father, an experienced martial arts athlete, was too much for him to resist for long. Catch your cue there? I'm going to charge you alimony too.
Well, Mophead, why? That's freaking stupid. I didn't do anything in this relationship. Everything was initiated by him. I even asked him if this was okay multiple times, because I knew he had you as a wife. I asked him nicely, and because he said everything would be alright, I'm not obligated to pay.
The fact that you still cheated despite knowing your lover already had a wife is the real problem here. You're going to have to talk to my lawyer about the rest. Talking to you guys is not going to get me anywhere. After I told her that my in-laws took their broken son and left the restaurant, I glared at the woman as I followed them out. I heard her muttering insults to my back, but I didn't give a good goddamn. Mr. Jacobson came after me.
Ayuki Abas, Kyra.
I'm fine. Mr. Jacobson, I feel so much better.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm real sorry about what I did earlier this week. That was just not okay.
Oh, no, sir. I'm just glad it all worked out the way it did. I got a divorce from that asshole, after all, and that's all that matters right now. I told him with a smile and left the restaurant. After that, with the help of my lawyer and my parents-in-law, the divorce was finalized without any problems, and Mason was forced by my parents-in-law to quit his job and sent to his aunt's BB up in a ski resort on the opposite side of the country. All of his salary was used to pay the alimony he owed me, and my parents-in-law forced him to quit his job and sent him to his aunt's BB up in a ski resort on the opposite side of the country. All of his salary was used to pay the alimony he owed me and the child support for our daughter. The money is still being paid regularly every month, and Heidi paid everything she owed in one lump sum. According to my in-laws, her parents paid for it, and now the cheater is raising her own son under the strict supervision of her family. As for me, I was left alone with my toddler daughter Ada. Mason didn't spend much time at home in the first place, so it didn't feel any different from usual. Thanks to my in-laws, Mason's been paying me a substantial amount of alimony on a regular basis, so working part-time until my daughter grows up will be enough to make ends meet. My daughter looks the same as usual, but a mother's instinct is telling me she is feeling pretty sad inside. So my goal from now on is to continue to support her as her loving mother so that she will not feel lonely ever again. She also has 2 sets of grandparents that are always overjoyed to spend time with her, so I think that goal will be achieved pretty easily. Revenge Reddit, subscribe now.